They say silence has a sound, and on a medieval battlefield, that sound was deafening. When the last arrow fell and the cries of war faded into the wind, a terrible quiet settled over the fields. A silence thick with death, despair, and the weight of what had just unfolded. Forget the clean battles of Hollywood, the heroic knights and shining swords. The truth of medieval war was far darker, a spectacle of chaos that left behind not glory, but horror. Today we're traveling back in time to uncover what really happened after the fighting stopped. The aftermath that turned green meadows into oceans of blood, and brave men into haunted souls who would never be the same again. Welcome to Untold Medieval Mysteries. When dawn rose on the day after battle, what once was grass and soil had transformed into something else entirely. The ground was soaked, not with rain, but with blood so thick that walking across the field was like trudging through wet clay. The metallic smell filled the air. Iron, sweat, smoke, and decay bodies lay scattered in every direction. Some intact, most not. Limbs, armor, and weapons formed grotesque patterns across the land. A twisted mosaic of men who just hours ago were shouting war cries. Crows gathered in black clouds above. Dogs barked and fought over flesh. Even the wind seemed to carry the echoes of screams long after they'd stopped. But this was only the beginning, because medieval battles rarely ended cleanly. And what followed could be worse than the fighting itself. The victors, if you could call them that, stumbled among the corpses searching for the living. Their own comrades first, then their enemies. Those who could still move crawled and cried for water. Some begged to be finished off. Others whispered prayers to gods that no longer answered. For commanders, cleanup was an impossible task. There were no trucks, no machines, no medical corps, just men with spades, and stomachs barely strong enough to face what lay before them. It could take days, even weeks, for the dead to be buried. And under the summer sun, that meant one thing. The battlefield became a festering swamp of disease and despair. You might imagine the survivors mourning their fallen comrades, singing hymns over shallow graves. But in truth, the battlefield became a marketplace of the macabre. As soon as the swords stopped clashing, a new army arrived, not of knights or soldiers, but of scavengers. They came from the nearby villages, farmers, beggars, even children, armed not with blades but with baskets and pliers. They called it picking the field. To them, a fallen knight was not a tragedy. He was an opportunity. A single sword could buy a man's freedom. A suit of armor was worth more than a peasant's home. So they picked, and pried, and pulled, ripping valuables from the dead. Sometimes the bodies weren't even cold. There are accounts of dying soldiers watching helplessly as strangers argued over who would take their boots. The looting often turned violent. Imagine 3 men wrestling over a helmet while the corpse beneath them still bleeds. That was the reality. The battlefield, once a place of valor, became a grotesque carnival of greed. And yet, this scavenging economy kept villages alive. Armor was repaired by blacksmiths, resold in markets, and worn again by new warriors in future wars. The tools of death recycled endlessly, just like the cycle of violence itself. If you were lucky enough to survive the battle, your real fight had only just begun. Medieval medicine was brutal. Most battlefield surgeons were barbers, men who shaved beards by day and sawed off limbs by night. Their tools? Knives, irons, hammers, and faith. When a sword cut deep, the treatment was simple. Press a red-hot iron to the wound to cauterize it. The pain was unimaginable, but the alternative was bleeding out. There were no anesthetics, no antibiotics, no understanding of infection. Wine was poured over open wounds, not out of compassion, but because they believed it cleansed the spirit. It did help. A little by accident. The alcohol sometimes killed bacteria, though no one knew why. Amputation was common. If your arm or leg was shattered, the barber would take a saw, say a prayer, and begin cutting. You'd bite on a stick and hope to pass out before the end. Some survived. Most didn't. Those who lived bore scars that marked them for life, not just on their bodies, but in their minds. Because the horrors they witnessed and endured would follow them forever. The scars of war ran deeper than flesh. Knights returned home to families who barely recognized them, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. They flinched at sudden noises, awoke screaming in the night, and saw the battlefield in every shadow. Today, we'd call it PTSD. Back then they called it weakness, or worse, possession. Society expected them to return to honor, to the code of chivalry, as if they hadn't spent months knee-deep in blood. Some turned to the church, seeking forgiveness for sins that weren't theirs to bear. Others drowned their memories in ale, turning taverns into their only sanctuary. And a few disappeared entirely, choosing exile, wandering alone as haunted remnants of the wars that broke them. But even for those who found peace, the echoes of the battlefield never left. Every clang of a blacksmith's hammer, every smell of smoke from a hearth, brought the memories flooding back. The mind, it seems, was the final battleground. Not every fallen warrior was destined for the grave. Some were far too valuable for that. Capturing nobles alive was often more profitable than killing them. A single captured duke could fund an entire army. The ransom system became a grim business, knighthood mixed with capitalism. If you had a noble name and a rich family, you were treated with courtesy, fed, housed, and even entertained. If not, you were expendable. Common soldiers were rarely shown mercy. Some were executed, others enslaved, their bodies left where they fell. Ransom negotiations could take months, even years. One English noble was held for a decade, living comfortably in a French castle while lawyers debated his price. For the wealthy, captivity was inconvenient. For the poor, it was fatal. The irony? The same knight who once fought beside you might be the one to sell your freedom war. As it turned out, wasn't just fought for glory. It was business. When the soldiers and scavengers had moved on, someone still had to deal with what was left. Thousands of rotting corpses, animals feeding on flesh, and disease spreading like wildfire. The job fell to the locals, peasants with strong backs and stronger stomachs. They dug enormous trenches, layering body upon body in mass graves. Sometimes they burned them instead, black smoke curling into the sky for days. But burial wasn't always possible. In winter, the ground was frozen solid. The dead simply stayed where they were, frozen monuments to the madness of men. Wolves and crows feasted freely. When spring thawed the earth, bones surfaced again, a grim reminder of the price of power. Many believed these unburied souls wandered as ghosts. Their cries carried on the wind. Villagers avoided battlefields for generations, whispering prayers whenever they passed. Even now, centuries later, archaeologists uncover their remains, the silent witnesses of forgotten wars. But the worst killer of all wasn't steel or fire. It was the invisible plague that followed. Rotting bodies poisoned the soil and rivers. Diseases like dysentery, typhus, and plague spread faster than rumors in a royal court. Armies that survived the battle often died in the weeks that followed, not from wounds, but from the water they drank. Villages downriver suffered too, their wells tainted with death. The victory celebrations were short-lived. Triumph soon gave way to fever, vomiting, and despair. The battlefield, it turned out, wasn't done killing. History remembers the battles, Agincourt, Poitiers, Bannockburn, but rarely do we remember what came after. Behind every heroic charge, there were days of horror. Behind every shining sword, a shadow that never faded. The knights of old are gone now. Their castles stand in ruins, their songs forgotten. But their ghosts remain, not in haunting, but in the lessons they left behind. War is never clean, It never was. It never will be. And for every tale of glory sung through time, there are countless stories buried beneath the blood and the mud. The stories of men who survived the battle, but never truly came home. This was life after the battle, the forgotten side of the Middle Ages, where history met horror, and humanity paid the price. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Untold Medieval Mysteries. Please do subscribe and like our videos. We release a new one every Friday. So until next time, I hope everyone has an amazing week. Cheers!